Hello everyone! So with the official announcement of the Lydie and Swell Legend Fest coming later today, I kind of figured I should take a moment to sort of just sit down and discuss with y'all, like, how exactly are you going to be spending your gems over maybe the next month or so? I wanted to talk about specifically these three units, right? Because we have Lydie coming tonight on Global, and then the next banner after will be Master Ryza, and the banner after that will have Izana. And these are three very, very high tier units. They are all at a pretty similar power level. Now, Izana is an attacker, so she's a little bit less desirable than these two, but she's still one of the strongest attackers we have in the game. So with three super like high tier desirable banners in a row, like a lot of people are, I would assume, are wondering like, okay, so how should I use my gems? Especially if you're not spending, if you're like a free player or whatever. You may be expecting to spark one of these units, but like, which banners do you want to pull on? Like, how are you going to survive this going forward and whatever? And like, maybe you want to know what the units do so that you like have a better idea of which one you actually want to go for and all in on, right? There's a lot of nuance here. I will do a full review, of course, of each of these units and their banner partners when the banners actually come, but I just wanted to do like a quick overview and showcase of the power of these three characters and sort of explain why they are so coveted, so desirable. And so first up is Lydie. Lydie is obviously coming tonight. She's the first up in this onslaught of just like super high tier units. And the reason Lydie is so good is mostly because of her second skill. Her second skill is an area healing skill, and if you've used 2-star Meru, you might be aware of how strong area healing is in this game. It's very, very good, right? It can help keep your team alive for a long time to be able to do more damage and just get through like harder content. And area healing is pretty premium. Up until this point, the only character with area healing on a normal skill is Meru. I believe Aisha has it on her burst, but that's not really consistent. It's not really reliable. However, area healing alone isn't enough to make a character like SSS tier or whatever, right? We already have that. However, in addition to that area heal, she gives all allies a skill damage buff for 1 turn. And at base value, it's 20% skill damage, as you can see here. However, we have a little trait in this game called Enhanced Damage Buff A, which boosts potency of damage buffs given to attackers by 50% at rank 5. And you can see here on her gear, this is the trait. I have it at level 5 on every single piece of gear here. Which is effectively, well, it is 150% increased potency of that buff from her skill 2. And that's not adding 150% on, right? It's not additive. It's not like it goes to 170%, but it is a multiplier. So it increases it by 2.5 times. So this buff ends up being, 50% skill damage, which is a lot. That's 2 alchemy candies, right? Like, and it's generic. It's not just magic. It's not just fizz. It's all damage. So very, very, very strong. So on top of having great healing, she also just drastically increases the damage of your team. And on top of that, she gives lightning allies skill damage with her passive. This is very important if you have Izana, because Izana's lightning as well. It's one of the reasons Izana is so good. Not the only reason, of course. You don't need the Lydie synergy, but the Lydie synergy just makes her even stronger, right? And her skill 1 is okay. It's not really anything to write home about. Her burst is very good, but hard to use. However, it does have good synergy with Izana, because Izana is mostly a skill 2 character. And what her burst does is it basically gives a really, really large skill damage buff to the next character on the timeline of 100%. So when she uses her burst, next character gets this massive buff. Then it's very hard to, use this buff into another burst because it's on her burst. But if you have the proper trait set up, that's scaled to 250%. And 250% skill damage is a lot. Like, imagine this on Ryza's skill 2, right? She's going to delete anything. So Lydie is a very strong supporter that will give your team a lot of damage and that really desired sustain. And you might be wondering, well, that sounds great. How are we going to beat that? Well, you kind of don't. She's still like the strongest supporter for a reason. However, these two characters, Ryza and Izana, are also fantastic in their given roles. Ryza is a slash breaker, and she will be on the next banner after Lydie. She is an area breaker, so she hits area. Her break damage is okay. However, she does two really, really crazy things with this skill, her skill 2. Before attacking, she gives the enemy a 25% slash resistance debuff. This is very important. It's before attacking, so it applies to the break damage that she applies to the enemy. So this debuff scales her own break damage, and it also creates weakness. If the enemy is at 0% slash resist, which most enemies will be, it will put them to -25, which is the threshold for weakness. That is very, very, very good. Weakness is strong because it synergizes with a few things like the continuation of that summer memoria that we all have because it was free, which gives 29% break damage when attacking weakness. You will basically have this on slash Ryza forever, especially as free to play. If you don't have any better memoria, everyone has this. It's super, super good. And it's very easy to create that weakness because Ryza creates it for herself. And then she also, after attacking, applies another debuff that receives the damage the enemy takes by 30% for one turn. So if you have proper speed tuning, right, Ryza is going to hit the enemy, lower their resistance, break them, and then make them take more damage. And then if you have an attacker going next, they can hit the enemy who is now broken and also has this debuff for taking more damage. And it's just like huge amount of damage from your breaker, right? She also, as her passive, when she breaks an enemy, she increases the damage that enemy takes by 25% for 2 turns as well. So it's a total of 55% increased damage taken on the enemy, which is a lot of extra damage, right? Like 50% extra damage is a lot. She also has a passive that increases her break damage when attacking weakness, so she has a good amount of passive break damage as well that other breakers don't tend to have right now on global. And her burst is also very cool because it is a single target auto break. Basically, it doesn't matter what the enemy's break gauge is or anything like that. You use the skill, they are broken. That's it. So very, very strong. It basically means she covers really good area break and really good single target break in one character, right? So very, very, very good. Cannot say enough good things about Ryza. And for the last of these three, we have Izana, who is a bolt attacker. Her skills are a little... They sound a little absurd. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know what they were thinking with this character. First of all, her skill 1 gives her a stacking permanent 25% crit rate buff. So, you know, if you do have the time to ramp with her skill 1 in a battle, basically you don't need another character to supply crit rate. Now, of course, you don't necessarily always have the time for that, so she does synergize very well with characters like Bolt Resna, who can increase her crit rate separately from this. But if you don't have Bolt Resna, or you don't want to rely on items for crit rate, this is still a very nice bonus. And her skill 2 is kind of her main appeal, her main draw. It's an area attack skill, and we haven't really had any super strong area attackers yet on global. Wilbel is like fine. Mew kind of sucks. In general, when you're going for area damage, you're usually doing bursts like on Logi or Resna or Odelia, but Izana has a really, really, really strong area skill too, with a damage rate of 191%. This is higher than Wilbel, this is higher than Mew, and its effect is absolutely cracked. After using the skill, she gains 50% crit damage. Yes, this is critical damage, plus 50%. And it can stack twice, up to 100%, and that's permanent. It lasts until the end of the battle. So if the battle goes on long enough, yeah, this is 100% crit damage after just using the skill twice. Like, really, really, really good. And that synergizes also very well with her burst, which is a guaranteed crit for a single target. So that 100% crit damage is just scaling her burst damage even more. Other than that, it's a pretty standard attacker burst. It scales up to 500% at level 5. It also has a little gimmick attached to it where she can apply a new ailment called Stun for 1 turn, which basically just skips the enemy's turn. This might sound really good, but in practice, you're not hitting it that often against hard content because they're either 90% resistant or immune. But when you can use it, it's a really good bonus. Skipping enemy turns is pretty powerful. But yeah, basically the whole deal with Izana is she uses her skill 2 to wipe out the small enemies, and then she goes in for the kill with a massively boosted burst from all the critical damage that she got from using her skill 2. So she kind of doubles as both a very strong area clearer and a very strong single target damage dealer all in one. And if that wasn't crazy enough, she also has this passive, which is kind of the same as her skill 2. It's another critical damage buff that goes up to 100%, and she gets it after defeating an enemy. So yeah, pretty crazy. Izana is just a really, really, really good attacker. And I prepared a little showcase for these 3 characters. Let's just go here. Score battle. This is pretty current content on JP. Very hard chapter 8 boss. And I just wanted to showcase how silly these characters are. Just go into, a pretty difficult battle with just the 3 of them and auto through it. Nowadays on the, it was starting with chapter 8, I believe, on the JP server, battle timelines, the panels on the timeline are static. So you can actually, prepare comps and just set them on auto and they will do the same thing every single time. There's still RNG, like crit RNG, targeting RNG, things like that, but it more or less works out. So yeah, you can see here, Izana just doing heavy damage to the small adds, even without crits, and she gained a lot of critical damage to go with a burst in the future. And Ryza doing a great job just breaking everything, including the boss by herself, even though she's an area breaker. And we have Lydie's burst, which is going to massively increase Izana's damage on the next turn. And because Izana has her crit damage ramped and all that goes bust from Lydie, she will just be able to go in for the one-shot kill on the boss with the guaranteed crit. And all of that basically just results in a very easy SS, even with only 3 characters. Now, of course, they're very well geared, but it's just kind of I'm just showing this off to kind of illustrate the point, they are very strong. You cannot take any 3 characters and do this even at the same gear level, right? These characters are very, very, very good. And I guess that kind of brings me to my point for this video, I guess, is how, as a free player, do you prioritize which one of these 3 to get? How are you going to spend your gems? And honestly, it's a difficult question. I would say personally, go for the one you like most. You can't go wrong with any of them. Lydie is probably the least replaceable, however, as a support. We are getting better and better supports and defenders nowadays. So, if you wait a few months, Lydie might be power crept in the future, but she is still kind of the least replaceable out of the 3. Of course, Ryza is still very, very, very crazy as well, and it's really hard to decide, right? You don't need Izana to clear content, but she is super fun. She's super great on auto because of her AoE. She's absolutely a blast to use, but she is definitely the least important of the 3. I didn't have her till recently myself. Honestly, I didn't have any of them until this month. I got very unlucky on their banners, but yeah, they're very strong. If it helps you decide which banner to roll on, each of them also come with another unit on their banner. I would say for Lydie's banner, the second unit, Sue, is the weakest. She is a strike attacker with a fairly bad gimmick where she does more damage at full HP. It can be quite hard to keep characters at full HP, so Sue is not that great. And Ampel on Ryza's banner is a strike supporter. He gives a fairly strong physical attack buff. This is very good if you have like Slash Valeria or something. Or like Logi, for example, you want to make a strong physical team, but he's not really that useful outside of tower. You would rather have a better supporter like Lydie, but he's still good, and especially if you want to go for like max damage comps, which isn't particularly important in this game, but he's very meta for that, like, you know, hitting for millions of damage, say with a Logi burst or something. He's very good for that. That's the current meta for the leaderboard ranking in JP right now. However, these rankings are pretty whaley and there's no reward for them in game. So he's like, that's his main use, right? His main use is basically for a whale competition. So like, he's not super great, but I personally would like to have him, so he's not a bad choice to go for, and you can't go wrong with Ryza. And then on Izana's banner, we have Leela, who is the first and only so far icebreaker, other than like technically Keith, but not really. So Leela is also a very solid single target breaker. So I don't know, it's just kind of hard to say, and it's kind of up to you. Lydie is definitely kind of the strongest and least replaceable out of the three, but in my opinion, she has the weakest banner partner, being Sue. Meanwhile, Ryza has a much stronger banner partner. Like, I myself will probably not sink that many gems into Lydie's banner. I will probably mostly go on Ryza's banner and then spark Lydie. That's my personal plan for global. But I also don't care too much about my global resources, so it's kind of, you know, a little bit awkward. And then, yeah, if you don't get lucky, you probably aren't going to have gems left over for Izana, so you're just going to have to hope you get her with tickets or daily pulls, honestly. That's just kind of the way it is. But yeah, I hope this video was a little bit helpful, a little bit enlightening. I hope I showcased these characters' strength well. They're just really, really, really good. They haven't been power crept yet. Even a few months later, they probably won't be for the foreseeable future. So yeah. Don't feel bad about pulling for any of them. Any of them that you decide to go for, you definitely won't regret it. But yeah, I hope this video was helpful, and I wish you all the best of luck. Honestly, it's a rough time for free players, especially with 3 just absolutely crazy banners in a row. All of them absolutely worth using tickets on. But yeah, that's all from me for today. See you all in the next one. Bye-bye.